As a non-believing divorced parent, I share custody of my children with a fundamentalist Christian believer. And as you can imagine, this scenario presents some challenges for all involved. We parents have to deal with the fact that our children are being taught very different ideas in the other home, some of which may offend and conflict with our values. The children are in the especially difficult position of hearing opposite things from the two people they're most expected to trust and listen to. And there's potential that they may feel conflicted about which parent to identify with, or even confused about which one to obey. This is something they should not have to bear responsibility for, and it's clearly on the parents to deal with their differences like adults and make the situation as easy as possible for the kids to cope with. So how do we do this? How do atheists and fundamentalists, who may want their kids to believe very different and opposite things, cooperate to raise them without compromising their values? I've boiled my approach down to 5 basic points that guide how I deal with my children in this area. Hopefully, whether or not you're a parent, this can be of some help to you, as we all have our own situations where we must deal with people who believe differently. Now I want to be clear about something before we get started. Aside from having explained that my kid's mom is a fundamentalist Christian, which is a basic fact necessary for understanding this scenario, I'll say nothing more about her for the sake of privacy. This is about how I personally navigate this situation, and nothing else. My approach is broken down into 5 basic things I want my kids to understand, which is why I phrase these as if I'm speaking to them. Number 1. We, being all parents and step-parents, recognize there is a difference in beliefs between the two houses. This is pretty obvious, of course, but I think it's important to openly acknowledge to your children. If you don't, you leave them wondering about and internalizing what they see happening at their parents' houses. Openly stating this, and doing so as positively as possible, relieves your kids of a lot of pressure, makes them feel safe asking questions, and helps them see that their parents recognize what's going on and have the situation under control. 2. While we may strongly disagree on some of our beliefs, it's okay that we believe differently, and we still respect each other. Now this one may be tricky, but it's vital. Clearly, a Christian family will not think an atheist influence on their kids is okay, especially if they believe hell is on the line. And an atheist like me will not think many of the things taught or rationalized by Christians are okay. So this is the step that may require the most personal maturity from the parents, as well as a somewhat nuanced understanding of what we mean when we say something is okay. I basically mean that we show our kids we've come to peace with the fact that they are taught things we don't like, and we express to them that we don't look down on the other parent, and we won't look down on them for participating with the other parent. As difficult as this may be, the only alternative is to put the kids directly in the middle of a no-holds-barred battle that undermines their sense of stability and their understanding of how to relate to each parent. But this bleeds into the next couple points, so I'll move on. Number 3. While one parent may say things in opposition to atheism, and another may say things in opposition to religion, neither of us will speak negatively, or expect you kids to think negatively, about the other parent or activities they engage in to practice their beliefs. This is a very vital distinction to make. From my perspective, criticizing religion is an important part of expressing what I believe. Conversely, criticizing atheism may be an important part of expressing what a Christian believes. And as far as I'm concerned, this is all fair game. My kids know this channel exists, and my older ones have access to it. So if they wish, they can see me critique religion, and depending on the video, it's often in a satirical way. I know for a fact that they hear Christians mock atheists as well. But even if they didn't, the simple act of exposing them to the Bible, which belittles atheists in ways that cuts to the core of our character and literally threatens us with eternal torture, is more aggressive than anything I've put on this channel. But I'm okay with this, as long as the conversation is about broad ideas. Where the line needs to be drawn is in directly criticizing the other parent or any activity that takes place at the other household. For example, for all I say about the Bible or Christianity in general, I would never say, "Your mom is so superstitious and bigoted," or, "Oh, I can't believe she's taking you to church again." That would be extremely inappropriate. By the same token, of course, I would hope that she would never tell my kids I shouldn't have a YouTube channel, or that I'm a blasphemer who's denying God in my heart. This leads into number 4, which is, if you do ask one of us about the other parent's beliefs or practices, we will explain our disagreement as a legitimate difference of opinion, and be clear that this difference doesn't represent anything wrong with the other parent. Sometimes people mean well and come to different conclusions, and neither of us has all the answers. Sometimes my kids will ask me about an apologetic or a teaching that they have learned at the other household. which is understandable and totally inevitable given the situation. When this happens, I always start by asking whether they want to hear my perspective on what was said. If they say yes, then I proceed. But I make it clear that I'm not saying their mom is stupid or automatically wrong for having said what she did, reminding them that I used to be a Christian and wasn't stupid when I was, and that I hope they can learn from having heard each point of view. I try to read their body language and facial expressions, and I check from time to time to assure them I can back off if the conversation makes them uncomfortable. This doesn't mean I soften or become wishy-washy on what I believe. I just need to give my kids room to navigate hearing different things from their parents. And finally, 5. We understand that you may learn from and pick up on points of view from each parent. This is part of exploring what you believe and who you are, and allowing for it is part of recognizing the legitimacy of your interaction with the other parent. While each of us will clearly have standards for how you behave and what you say and view at our own home, you are not expected to follow all of your parents' judgment calls at the other parent's house, and we will not disapprove of or consider you in trouble for openly discussing beliefs with the other parent, starting to explore or possibly adopt some of that parent's beliefs, or participating with that parent in things based on their beliefs. This may be the single most important item on the list. No child should ever have to worry that something they do with one parent would get them in trouble with the other. Of course, there are exceptions for issues of safety and criminal behavior, but you know what I'm getting at. I would never berate my children or make them feel bad for going to church, reading the Bible, or participating in any other religious activity with their mother. Conversely, that household should not make the children feel in trouble if during my custodial time they watched or helped with my videos, attended a secular function, or read an atheist book. I personally tend to go above and beyond on this point. Not only do I tell them that I'll love them and be equally proud of them whether they end up Christian or atheist, but when they've asked, I've actually driven some of them to church activities during my custodial time and encouraged them to explore their beliefs. Not everybody needs to go this far, but it should go without question that a child should never feel any sort of pressure to act atheist at their Christian parent's house or act Christian at their atheist parent's house. Anyway, I hope you found something of use here. Basically, this is just Coparenting 101 applied explicitly to religion, and in fact, I'd maintain that any behavior that does not fall in line with these guidelines puts undue pressure on children and borders on parental alienation. Now, I'm sure most of us expect the fundamentalist parents to be the pushy ones in this situation, but it's important that we as atheists reflect on our own behavior and make sure that, even when we feel we're in the right, we're not making a tricky situation more difficult for our children than it has to be. Honestly, being a control freak will backfire for you anyway, and you can rest assured it will backfire for the Christian parent if that's the route they choose to take. And if you teach your kids to think clearly and you give them permission to navigate different beliefs, you probably have nothing to fear. The only reason to resist these guidelines is that you think your worldview is so fragile that you need to isolate your kids to get them to believe in it. And that's a worry I've never had since I was a Christian. I'd like to thank new subscriber Alif Muhammad for this new arrangement of my theme song. It's quite enjoyable, and I'm flattered someone would take the time to do such a thing. Of course, I also want to thank my patrons, including Council Azad members SR Foxley and Q. Your support makes a huge difference. In the next day or two, I'll be holding a drawing to see who wins the August prize. If any of the rest of you want to support me, or otherwise follow me, the Patreon and social media links are below. Thank you, and Zod bless Krypton.